On Friday the 13th, hours after President Obama claimed ISIS had been contained, Paris witnessed the second most deadly attack in the Western world since 9/11. In a coordinated attack in multiple locations, before it was over, more than 120 citizens lay dead and over 300 wounded. And Paris is now under a curfew for the first time since occupation from Germany. And there are reports that PlayStation 4 may have been used to help coordinate the attack. Several raids have taken place over the last few hours, and some officials are quoted as saying PlayStation 4s have been recovered. Belgium's Federal Home Affairs Minister said that PlayStation 4 is being used by ISIS to communicate because it is hard to monitor. And this isn't the first time that PlayStation has been linked to ISIS. Just a few months ago, a 14-year-old Turkish national living in Austria was sentenced to 2 years in jail and pleaded guilty to terrorism charges. He had reached out to militants in the Islamic State and had downloaded bomb-building blueprints from the internet onto his PlayStation that were later found by officials. And with terrorists knowing that cell phones and the internet are notorious for being spied on, taking your plans to a game does make a little bit of sense, according to experts, because they say that it's a lot harder to track. Not only can you use voice communications, you could get inside a party with somebody, send messages, but you could also get inside a game, for instance. And how many games have we seen where you can, write out a message or draw a picture in bullets? So, you could have, even if authorities were watching somebody, obviously they can't see what's happening in every single game. So people could be, gunning out messages, literally, in order to send things back and forth without actually having to send a physical message that could be linked back to them. Now, of course, this isn't the real story, in my opinion. I'm not trying to say that PlayStation is to blame in any sort of way. Even if it is found out that they did use the PlayStation 4 to communicate, of course, Sony has no blame whatsoever in this. But what is partially to blame, and this is just my opinion, is the insane policies that leaders in the Western world have enacted and are enacting. And I'm talking about a lot of things encompassed within that. And yes, I'm talking about things like the U.S. setting the Middle East on fire, because we have played a large part in that. You can't deny it. I would say that Iraq was a lot better off with Saddam. Libya was a lot better off before Hillary's war, and they took out Gaddafi. These were bad, terrible, evil people, but it wasn't, nearly the mess that it is right now. But also, you got to look at what's happening with the borders in so many nations. Back in February, there was an article in several major publications where ISIS came out and said, hey, look, we're going to use mass migration to infiltrate into all the countries that we deem as enemies. And so for months, the media has showed us lines of refugees fleeing into places like Europe. And anybody who dares ask the question as to whether or not some of these refugees could possibly be terrorists or be tied to them, of course, they were automatically labeled as, haters and loons and racists and, all other sorts of names. And when the U.S. announced that we were taking in over 10,000 refugees ourselves, which, by the way, they just started arriving here today, in fact, I heard some people call, Donald Trump a conspiracy theorist because he dared ask the question, what if this is a Trojan horse? Now, you can hate and despise Donald Trump, but his question was anything but insane. And you've got countries like Germany who are just waving their hands, telling everybody to come on in. And look, if we were this big utopia, this global utopia, I'd say, sure, let's not have any borders. Why have borders? Let's just, hug it all out. Everybody gets along. But it's not. And these are refugees coming from a country that is overrun by extremists. And nobody knows who they are. You cannot vet all these people and promise your citizens that they don't have ties to terrorists when they're flooding over the borders thousands at a time. And sure enough, it's being reported that some of the attackers in the attack in Paris were indeed Syrian refugees, and ISIS is claiming that this is just the warm-up act. Now, France has since closed its borders, but it seems a little bit too late considering that they waited till the damage was done before acting. I mean, the gates have already been open. They're already in. And, I mean, anybody with just the tiniest bit of common sense, I think, could see this coming. You cannot have a nation without borders. And it has nothing to do with being anti-immigration or racist or any of the other names that people try to throw against the wall to keep you feeling guilty about common sense reasoning. I am very pro-immigration. In fact, the girl that I'm crazy over right now isn't from here. And so one day, she's going to have to come here, and we're going to have to do it legally. That's the plan. But just know who you're bringing in. It isn't about a race or a religion. It's about making sure that you're bringing in people who aren't going to be a safety concern for your people. It's about making sure that you're bringing in people who want to assimilate, who are going to contribute positively to the country, and making sure also we're not bringing in things like diseases that have already been wiped out. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to pay attention to who's crossing your border to keep your nation safe. And there are a lot of leaders around the globe that what they're doing is, in my opinion, almost treasonous. Now, I understand the humanitarian crisis. And if I am completely honest, if I was there, if I would have been born in this country and I had a family, my job as the head of my household would be to make sure that I keep my family safe. And you better believe that I would do everything within my power, legal or not, to keep them safe. Which is also why I support countries coming together. Like, I would love to see Russia and the U.S. coming together, working on a safe zone in Syria for all these people. That, to me, makes sense. What doesn't make sense is to ship them off here, there, and everywhere and just tell everyone to come on in. It's insane. You have no idea what you're bringing in, especially when a large terrorist organization has told you that they're going to be coming too within this migration. It makes no sense. A nation without borders isn't a nation at all. Period.
Are you listening? Damn.